conferences. She had more views than like Alcaraz, Sinner, Novak.
Philippine tennis. I'm the only Filipina in the draw this year. I'm the only Filipina that's ever been in the draw.
Alex Eala has already accomplished what many rising stars spend entire careers chasing. She defeated Iga Swiatek, drew some of the strongest attendance numbers at the Dubai Tennis Championships, and generated more online attention after the Australian Open than players like Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner, Novak Djokovic, and Daniil Medvedev combined. Yet behind the headlines is a challenge few people in tennis are willing to discuss openly. Eala recently revealed that there are tournaments she still struggles to enter, not because of injuries or rankings, but because of travel restrictions tied to her passport. This goes far beyond paperwork or scheduling complications. It highlights a deeper imbalance within professional tennis, one that quietly affects players depending on where they come from. While much of the tennis world celebrates Eala as a groundbreaking talent from the Philippines, very little attention is given to the structural obstacles standing in her way. Most players from Europe, North America, or Japan move through the global tour system without ever thinking about visa limitations, embassy approvals, or restricted mobility. For Eala, those issues are part of the reality surrounding her career. The numbers make the contrast impossible to ignore. The Philippine passport currently provides visa-free or visa-on-arrival access to only a fraction of the world compared to countries like Germany, France, Japan, or Singapore, whose citizens enjoy near-universal access across the international circuit. In a sport built on constant travel and rapid scheduling, that difference carries real consequences. And history has already shown how barriers outside the court can shape the future of extraordinary athletes. The concern now is whether tennis will recognize the problem before another generational talent is forced to navigate challenges that have nothing to do with performance, discipline, or ability. That number completely changes the way you evaluate Alex Eala's rise in professional tennis. Every Grand Slam host nation, Australia, France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, requires her to secure visas in advance before she can even step onto a court. China, a critical stop during the Asian swing, presents the same obstacle. Across the 2026 WTA calendar, a significant portion of tournament destinations require Philippine passport holders to complete lengthy visa procedures weeks or even months ahead of time. Meanwhile, players from countries such as Germany or France can move across the tour with virtually unrestricted access. And this is where the issue evolves from a travel inconvenience into a genuine competitive disadvantage. Tennis schedules change constantly. Injuries alter entry lists, withdrawals create unexpected openings, and wildcard opportunities can appear with only a few days' notice. In those moments, the athlete who can immediately board a flight holds an invisible advantage that statistics never reveal but careers absolutely reflect. Eala addressed this reality herself during a 2025 press event connected to BPI and Globe Telecom, explaining that there are tournaments she simply cannot enter because the process does not allow enough time. That statement carried far more weight than frustration. It exposed the limitation built into the system itself. Eala is already ranked among the top players in the world and continues to grow into one of the most recognizable figures in women's tennis. Yet she still faces restrictions many of her competitors never have to consider. Her training base at the Rafa Nadal Academy provides residency benefits within the Schengen region, helping her navigate much of Europe more efficiently. But outside that zone, the challenges return immediately. The United States, Australia, the United Kingdom, and China, some of the most important destinations in professional tennis, still require repeated visa approvals and extensive preparation every time she travels. This is no longer a matter of inconvenience or paperwork. It is a structural limitation capable of influencing rankings, scheduling flexibility, sponsorship opportunities, and long-term career momentum. And once the financial implications enter the conversation, the imbalance becomes even harder to ignore. The scale of Alex Eala's popularity is no longer a theory. It is visible across every major platform connected to professional tennis. In early 2026, Gigi Salmon of Sky Sports suggested that Eala may already be the most compelling star in women's tennis. During Indian Wells Open, a simple behind-the-scenes video following her daily routine became the tournament's most-watched YouTube upload of the year, drawing extraordinary engagement compared to far more established names on tour. Executives connected to BNP Paribas openly acknowledged the commercial value attached to her appearances, while respected tennis journalist John Wertheim highlighted the astonishing digital numbers surrounding her Australian Open press conferences. According to him, Eala generated more attention online than Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner, Novak Djokovic, and Daniil Medvedev combined. That level of visibility is not normal for a player still climbing through the rankings. It signals that Eala has connected with a global audience in a way the sport rarely sees. Yet when you examine her verified sponsorship portfolio, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Her partnerships with Globe Telecom, Nike, Babolat, Bank of the Philippine Islands, and locally are significant, but most remain heavily connected to the Philippine market. By comparison, European players ranked in a similar range often secure multiple luxury partnerships from globally dominant brands because they operate within a system that allows instant mobility across major commercial hubs. They can attend sponsor campaigns in Paris, Milan, or Madrid with minimal logistical barriers and immediately return to competition. That flexibility matters enormously in modern sports marketing. International brands build campaigns around speed, accessibility, and rapid scheduling. When an athlete faces repeated visa processing delays and uncertain travel timelines, global activation becomes more difficult regardless of talent or popularity. And perhaps the clearest sign of Eala's undervaluation is the internet itself. Viral stories falsely claiming massive endorsement deals and billion-dollar contracts continue circulating online, despite having no factual basis. Those fabrications reveal something important. The public already perceives her as a superstar operating on the level of the sport's biggest commercial icons. The disconnect between the cultural impact Alex Eala creates and the commercial opportunities she receives is undeniable, and the travel limitations attached to her passport remain a major part of that imbalance. So here is the question the tennis world needs to confront directly. Should the WTA create a dedicated travel assistance program for athletes competing with low mobility passports? Because this issue extends far beyond inconvenience, and history already shows what can happen when elite talent is forced to compete against structural limitations outside the sport itself. The Philippines has seen this story before. Yuka Seso became the first Filipino athlete to win a major championship in golf when she captured the U.S. Women's Open in 2021 while representing the Philippines. She instantly became one of the nation's most celebrated sports figures. But only a year later, she officially chose to represent Japan. The reason was not emotional distance from her Filipino identity or lack of national pride. It was practicality. During a press conference in Manila in 2022, Seso explained that travel freedom and time management were critical factors behind her decision. Officials from the National Golf Association of the Philippines openly acknowledged the same reality, noting that the strength of the Japanese passport dramatically simplified international competition. The difference was enormous. A Japanese passport granted access to well over 190 countries, compared to the far more limited mobility available through a Philippine passport. Overnight, the logistical barriers surrounding tournament travel, scheduling, and international commitments were reduced on a massive scale. Seso later captured another U.S. Women's Open title representing Japan, while the Philippines lost one of the greatest athletes its golf history had ever produced. That precedent matters because it exposes a larger issue global sports organizations rarely address openly. When athletes from certain nations repeatedly face visa complications, restricted mobility, and reduced commercial flexibility, the pressure eventually becomes impossible to ignore. And now, as Alex Eala continues rising in professional tennis, many people are beginning to wonder whether the same structural realities that reshaped Yuka Seso's career could eventually place similar pressure on one of the Philippines' most important tennis stars. If the evidence truly points in this direction, and the numbers strongly suggest it does, then the entire conversation surrounding Alex Eala needs to change. Right now, she appears to be standing at the exact crossroads where Yuka Seso once stood. A globally recognized Filipino athlete, entering the most important years of her career, while carrying the same structural limitations tied to international mobility. The precedent already exists, the pressures are already visible, and the competitive imbalance has already been proven in another sport. But there is one critical distinction. Eala has repeatedly stated, both publicly and directly, that she has no intention of changing national representation. In interviews with outlets such as Front Office Sports and during appearances on the Served podcast, she has spoken emotionally about the support she receives from Filipino fans and the connection she feels with that community. She has made it clear that the energy, loyalty, and passion coming from the Philippines cannot be replicated anywhere else in the world. And there is no reason to question her sincerity. The bond between Eala and her supporters is genuine and unmistakable. But this discussion is ultimately larger than loyalty or public statements. The real issue is the hidden cost attached to staying exactly where she is. Every delayed visa process, every missed late entry opportunity, every disrupted preparation week, every sponsor event attended remotely instead of in person. Those moments accumulate over time. A wild card she cannot accept on short notice means ranking points potentially lost. Time spent navigating embassy procedures becomes time removed from recovery, training, or competition. Global brands often prioritize athletes who can move instantly between major markets, appear at live activations, and adapt to changing schedules without restriction. When those opportunities become harder to access, the effect compounds quietly year after year. None of these obstacles appear beside her name in the rankings, but all of them influence the trajectory of a modern athlete's career. That is what this story is really about. Not speculation about whether Alex Eala will ever change passports, but recognition that remaining exactly where she is may continue to demand sacrifices her competitors never have to make. The longer this continues, the more those disadvantages multiply. Former Philippine Davis Cup player Raymond Suarez explained in 2025 that Filipino athletes have long been forced to depend heavily on personal family resources and private sponsorships simply to remain competitive internationally. In Alex Eala's case, her path was supported by a family structure capable of providing opportunities many talented athletes in the Philippines could never realistically access. That reality exposes a deeper issue. When success depends largely on private financial backing rather than institutional support, the system stops functioning as a true development pipeline and begins operating more like chance. The Philippines may have discovered a once-in-a-generation tennis star, but the larger question is whether the infrastructure surrounding her is capable of sustaining what she represents globally. Looking ahead, the consequences could become increasingly measurable. If Eala is not consistently seeded across all 4 Grand Slams by the end of 2027, conversations about rankings, preparation, sponsorship limitations, and scheduling disadvantages will become impossible to separate from the mobility restrictions tied to her passport. Missed wildcard opportunities, compressed travel preparation, reduced commercial flexibility, and limited access to rapid scheduling changes are not abstract talking points. They create tangible effects over the course of a professional season. And when mainstream tennis coverage eventually begins examining those patterns seriously, it may force the sport to confront an issue it has largely ignored for years. Because this story is no longer just about one athlete overcoming obstacles. It is about whether the structure of global tennis unintentionally places additional burdens on players from countries with limited travel mobility. The Philippines has already experienced the loss of a generational talent in another sport under similar circumstances, and that precedent now hangs over the conversation surrounding Eala. The broader business and scheduling systems inside professional tennis may reward athletes from highly mobile nations in ways that are rarely acknowledged publicly. And as more players begin speaking openly about these challenges, the sport may finally have to address whether equal opportunity truly exists for every competitor on tour.